What if the reason nothing is coming to you is because you want it too badly? Most people believe success comes from chasing harder, forcing outcomes, and holding tighter. But the truth is the opposite. The moment you stop needing something, it starts needing you. Opportunities appear. People notice you. Peace replaces pressure. Detachment is not giving up. It's stepping into power. It's trusting that what is meant for you doesn't require desperation. And when you master this shift, life stops feeling like a fight and starts flowing toward you. At some point, almost everyone believes that the secret to getting what they want is simple: chase harder. Work more. Push more. Think about it constantly. Hold it tightly so it doesn't slip away. We're taught that effort equals results, and while effort matters, there is a hidden truth most people miss. The harder you chase from a place of fear, urgency, and desperation, the further things seem to move away from you. There is an invisible signal behind your actions. It's not just what you do. It's the energy behind why you do it. When you chase something as if your happiness depends on it, you unknowingly send a message of lack. You tell yourself that you don't have enough yet, that you are incomplete without that person, that opportunity, that money, that recognition. And people feel this. Life responds to this. Desperation creates pressure. Pressure creates resistance. And resistance slows everything down. Think about moments in your life when you wanted something so badly that you overthought every step. You checked constantly. You worried constantly. You forced conversations, forced progress, forced outcomes. Instead of things moving naturally, they became heavy. You felt exhausted. You felt anxious. And often, the result didn't match the effort. That's because chasing from fear tightens your grip on the outcome. And when your grip is tight, you lose flexibility. You stop noticing other doors. You stop trusting timing. You stop enjoying the process. Your world becomes narrow, centered on one thing you feel you must have. But attraction works differently. What naturally draws people, success, and opportunities toward someone is not force, it is certainty. It is calm focus. It is the quiet belief that what is meant for you will not require you to beg, prove, or lose yourself. When you stop chasing from a place of lack, you remove the resistance that was blocking movement. You create space. And in that space, things can finally flow. This is where the shift begins. Detachment is often misunderstood. People hear the word and assume it means not caring, giving up, becoming passive. But true detachment is not indifference. It is emotional freedom. It is wanting something deeply while knowing your worth does not depend on whether you get it. There is immense power in that state. When you are detached, your actions change. You still work, you still show up, you still move forward, but the fear disappears, the urgency softens. You no longer act to prove your value. You act because you already believe you have value, and that belief is magnetic. Confidence that doesn't need validation is one of the most attractive energies a person can carry. It tells the world, I choose this, but I don't need this to be complete. I move forward, but I am not desperate for the outcome. I trust myself regardless of the result. People feel that. Opportunities respond to that. Life opens around that. When your happiness is not tied to one specific outcome, you become lighter. Conversations become natural. Decisions become clearer. You stop over-explaining. You stop over-giving. You stop shrinking yourself just to secure something. Instead, you stand in quiet certainty, and something interesting happens. The very things you once chased begin to move toward you. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped signaling that you were lacking. Self-worth is the foundation of attraction. When you know you are enough with, or without the result, you remove pressure from every interaction. You allow authenticity to replace performance. You allow patience to replace panic. This doesn't mean results appear instantly. Detachment is not a trick to manipulate outcomes. It is a transformation of identity. You move from someone trying to get validation to someone expressing value. And that shift changes everything. You start focusing on growth instead of approval. You invest in your skills, your mindset, your peace. You build a life that feels full now, rather than postponing happiness for later. Ironically, this fullness is what draws more in, because attraction follows alignment. When you are aligned with your worth, you stop tolerating what drains you. You stop forcing what feels unnatural. You stop clinging to what isn't choosing you back. And by releasing that grip, you create room for what truly matches you. The truth is simple but powerful. Chasing says, I need. Detachment says, I am. One creates tension. The other creates magnetism. The moment you realize that your value exists before the outcome, everything changes. You still have goals. You still have dreams. But you no longer carry the weight of desperation. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from trying to control everything. Planning every detail, predicting every outcome, replaying conversations in your mind, adjusting your behavior so nothing goes wrong. At first, it feels responsible. It feels like dedication. But over time, control turns into pressure, and pressure turns into disconnection from the natural flow of life. The need to control is often rooted in fear, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty. When you try to control every step, you are really trying to protect yourself from discomfort. You believe that if you think hard enough, plan carefully enough, and push strongly enough, you can guarantee the result. But life has never worked that way. Control creates tension between you and the present moment. Instead of experiencing what is happening, you are constantly trying to shape what should happen next. Your mind moves ahead while your life is still unfolding. And in that gap, stress grows. You start forcing timing, forcing answers, forcing progress. You measure every small sign as proof that things are working or failing. The journey becomes heavy because you are carrying the illusion that everything depends on you holding it together. But some of the most meaningful things in life require space. Relationships need space to grow. Opportunities need space to appear. Creativity needs space to breathe. When your grip is too tight, there is no room for possibility. Letting go of control does not mean becoming careless. It means understanding the difference between influence and force. You can influence your effort, your attitude, your consistency. But you cannot force timing, other people's choices, or every external outcome. Detachment from control creates relief. It allows you to focus on what is actually yours, your actions, your growth, your presence. Instead of trying to manage the entire path, you commit to the next step, and that simple shift changes the emotional experience of progress. When you release the need to control everything, you become more adaptable. Unexpected changes stop feeling like threats and start feeling like redirections. You notice opportunities you would have ignored because they didn't match your original plan. You become flexible without losing direction. Flow begins where force ends. There is a deeper intelligence in life that cannot be accessed through constant pressure. Some things unfold through timing, alignment, and readiness. When you step back from control, you allow that unfolding to happen. You move with life instead of against it. And this leads to another powerful shift, moving your focus away from getting and toward becoming. Many people spend years thinking their life will change when they receive something: the job, the money, the recognition, the relationship, the breakthrough. Their energy is pointed toward an external moment that will finally prove they've made it. Until then, they feel incomplete. But chasing outcomes keeps your attention in the future. Becoming brings your attention back to the present. When you focus on becoming, you ask different questions. Not, when will it happen? But, who am I becoming while it's unfolding? Not, why don't I have it yet? But, what is this season shaping inside me? This shift is subtle but transformative, because results are temporary, but identity is permanent. If you receive something without becoming the person who can sustain it, it often disappears. But when you become first, results follow naturally as a reflection of who you are. Growth attracts what force cannot. When you invest in your mindset, your discipline, your emotional strength, and your skills, you are building internal stability. You are creating someone who does not collapse under pressure, someone who does not depend on constant validation, someone who can recognize and receive opportunities when they arrive. Becoming removes desperation because you are no longer waiting to feel worthy. You are actively building worth through your actions and choices. Every day becomes meaningful, not because of what you get, but because of what you are developing. There is patience in this approach, but it is not passive patience. It is active evolution. You show up consistently, not to chase an outcome, but to refine yourself. And that refinement changes how you move through the world. People sense depth. Opportunities respond to preparation. Confidence grows from evidence you create through growth. None of this requires forcing results. It requires commitment to transformation. When your focus is on becoming, setbacks stop feeling like proof that you are behind. They become information, feedback, part of the shaping process. You stop measuring your life only by visible wins and start recognizing invisible progress. And ironically, this is when visible wins begin appearing more frequently. Because life reflects identity. When you become someone who is calm under uncertainty, disciplined without pressure, and confident without outcomes, you naturally move differently. Your decisions improve. Your standards rise. Your energy shifts. You stop chasing moments that will define you, and instead, you become someone who defines moments. Control fades. Growth replaces urgency. And the path that once felt forced begins to feel aligned. There is a kind of noise that lives inside the mind when you are deeply attached to an outcome. Every decision feels heavier than it should. Small delays feel like warnings. Silence feels like rejection. You replay scenarios, imagine worst-case outcomes, and question whether you're doing enough. It's exhausting, not because life is complicated, but because your emotional attachment makes everything feel urgent. When you loosen that attachment, something powerful happens. Your mind becomes quieter, not empty but clear. You stop reacting to every small shift as if it determines your future. Instead of operating from fear, you begin operating from awareness. Emotional freedom does not mean you stop caring. It means your emotions stop controlling your direction. Clarity grows in calm environments. When your mind is overwhelmed with worry and overthinking, you can't see what actually matters. You confuse urgency with importance. You make rushed decisions just to escape discomfort. And often, those rushed decisions create more problems than they solve. But when you detach from needing immediate reassurance, you give yourself space to think clearly. You pause before reacting. You observe before assuming. You choose your next step rather than being pushed into it by anxiety. This clarity changes the quality of your actions. You communicate more directly because you're not afraid of the response. You take risks because your identity isn't tied to the outcome. You walk away from what doesn't align because you trust that something else will. Emotional freedom removes the pressure to force certainty where none exists. And without that pressure, Your energy becomes focused instead of scattered. Overthinking divides your attention. Part of you is in the present, but another part is already worrying about what might happen next. Detachment brings your attention back. It allows you to fully engage with what you're doing now, which naturally improves performance, creativity, and connection. You become more decisive, not because you have all the answers, but because you're no longer paralyzed by fear of being wrong. You understand that clarity is not something you wait for. It's something that emerges through action taken from a calm state. There is strength in emotional stability. It makes your progress sustainable. Instead of burning out from constant pressure, you move with consistency. Instead of reacting to temporary setbacks, you stay aligned with long-term direction. And this leads to one of the most underrated forces behind meaningful success: patience. Patience is often misunderstood as waiting without action. But real patience is steady movement without panic. It is continuing your effort even when results are invisible. It is trusting that timing plays a role, even when you cannot see the full picture yet. When you are attached to immediate outcomes, time feels like an enemy. Every delay feels like failure. Every slow period feels like proof that something is wrong. This creates impulsive behavior, changing direction too quickly, abandoning progress too early, doubting yourself unnecessarily. Detachment changes your relationship with time. You begin to see slow seasons differently. Instead of interpreting them as stagnation, you recognize them as preparation. Growth is often happening beneath the surface before it becomes visible. Skills are developing. Awareness is expanding. Resilience is strengthening. Patience allows these invisible processes to complete. Without patience, people interrupt their own progress. They plant seeds, but dig them up too early to check if they're growing. They switch paths before momentum has time to build. They mistake silence for absence when sometimes silence is simply incubation. Detached patience is powerful because it combines trust with effort. You continue showing up, not because you are guaranteed immediate results, but because you understand that consistency compounds. Small actions repeated over time create outcomes that urgency cannot produce. This mindset removes emotional extremes. You don't feel invincible during quick wins or defeated during slow periods. You remain steady. That steadiness builds confidence that is not dependent on circumstances. And confidence built on patience is difficult to shake. You start measuring progress differently. Instead of asking, "Why hasn't it happened yet?" you ask, "Am I becoming better while it unfolds?" This question keeps you engaged in the process rather than trapped in the timeline. Patience also protects your peace. It prevents you from forcing situations that require time. It allows relationships to deepen naturally, opportunities to mature fully, and ideas to evolve before execution. Rushing often creates fragile results. Patience creates strong ones. There is a quiet discipline in continuing without visible reward. It requires trust, trust in your effort, trust in your direction, trust that not all progress is immediately obvious. Detachment supports this trust because your self-worth is no longer tied to speed. You realize that meaningful things rarely arrive instantly. They build through layers of experience, correction, and persistence. And when they finally appear, they are not surprising. They are the natural outcome of who you have been becoming. Emotional freedom brings clarity. Clarity supports consistent action. Consistent action, guided by patience, multiplies results over time. What once felt slow begins to feel intentional. What once felt uncertain begins to feel purposeful. You stop chasing quick reassurance and start building lasting momentum. And in that steady movement, breakthroughs find you, not because you rush toward them, but because you stayed long enough for them to arrive. There are moments in life when holding on feels like strength. You tell yourself that persistence means never letting go. That commitment means pushing through no matter how heavy something becomes. But not everything is meant to be carried forever. Some things stay only until they have taught you what you needed to learn. Letting go is one of the most misunderstood forms of growth. It does not mean failure. It does not erase effort. It simply acknowledges that your path is allowed to change. And often, the space created by release becomes the exact space where something better can enter. When you cling to what no longer aligns, a goal that drains you, a relationship that restricts you, an idea of success that no longer feels true, you occupy emotional space that could be used for expansion. Your attention stays tied to maintaining something instead of discovering what else is possible. This is why release can feel uncomfortable. Familiar discomfort feels safer than unfamiliar possibility. Even when something isn't working, letting go introduces uncertainty, and the mind prefers predictable struggle over unknown opportunity. But growth requires space. Think about how nature works. New growth does not appear where there is no room. Trees shed leaves, seasons change, cycles complete. Life continuously demonstrates that release is not loss, it is renewal. The same principle applies to personal transformation. When you allow yourself to release what is no longer aligned, your awareness expands. You notice different paths. You become available for conversations, ideas, and opportunities that were previously invisible because your focus was occupied. It is not that these possibilities suddenly appeared. It is that you finally created room to see them. Letting go also restores energy. Holding on requires constant mental effort, replaying, fixing, hoping, forcing. That energy can be redirected toward building something new. And that shift often accelerates progress more than persistence ever could. There is courage in saying, "This chapter served me, but it is not my future." That courage strengthens self-trust. You begin to understand that your life is not defined by how long you hold on, but by how honestly you respond to what you feel and learn. Release does not guarantee immediate replacement. Sometimes there is a quiet gap between what you leave and what arrives. That gap is important. It is where clarity deepens. It is where identity reshapes. It is where you learn to exist without clinging to certainty. In that space, you become more open, less defensive, more curious, and openness is one of the most powerful conditions for unexpected blessings. Opportunities often arrive from directions you never planned. A conversation leads to a new idea. A setback redirects you toward something more aligned. A closed door prevents you from settling for less than you're capable of experiencing. What once felt like loss begins to reveal itself as redirection. This is why release is not the end of attraction, it is the beginning of it. And beneath this entire process is a deeper force that quietly shapes your experience: trust. Trust is not blind optimism. It is the decision to move forward without constant proof. It is believing that effort matters even when results are delayed. It is understanding that not everything meaningful can be predicted in advance. Without trust, detachment feels impossible. You will hold tighter, question more, and interpret uncertainty as danger. But with trust, uncertainty becomes possibility. You stop needing to know every step before taking the next one. Trust shifts your energy from fear to openness. Instead of asking, "What if it doesn't work?" you begin asking, "What might this be leading me toward?" That question changes your emotional posture. You move from defense to exploration. Self-trust is especially powerful. When you trust yourself, outcomes lose their ability to define you. Success becomes feedback, not identity. Failure becomes information, not judgment. You understand that you can adapt, learn, and continue regardless of what happens. This confidence creates magnetism because it removes pressure from every experience. You are no longer negotiating your worth through results. You are expressing your worth through presence and action. Trust also supports patience. You allow processes to unfold without constant interference. You stop forcing answers before questions have matured. You recognize that timing is not always visible, but it is always active. There is a quiet strength in believing that what is meant for you will not require you to abandon yourself. This belief does not make you passive. It makes you aligned. You still act, still pursue, still commit. But you do so from stability rather than urgency. Over time, trust compounds. Small experiences reinforce it. You notice how past uncertainties led to growth, how unexpected changes opened better paths, how moments you once feared became turning points. These reflections build evidence that you can rely on movement even when clarity is incomplete. And with that trust, attraction becomes natural. You stop trying to control every outcome and start participating fully in the process. You release what restricts you. You stay open to what emerges. You move forward with the understanding that your role is not to force life into shape, but to meet it with awareness and courage. The moment trust replaces fear, effort feels lighter. The path feels wider. And what once required chasing begins to arrive